Greetings, friends out in North Dakota. This is Jerry Hansen here to talk to you today about communication. I know you are attending the NDCEL virtual summer conference. First time we've had to do it virtually, and so it's something new for all of us. I'm here to talk about communication today, specifically communication that hits the mark. Communication is a huge part of what we do. I am a former principal. I was principal at Kennedy Elementary in Fargo for 6 years. I retired in 2017. Before that, I had 33 years experience in Minnesota, 25 of them as a principal. So I knew what communication was, and I knew when it worked, and I certainly knew, as we all do, when it doesn't work. As I've retired, I've started to do other things now. One of the things I'm doing is um, training. I've taken training from John Maxwell, our leadership guru, and also John Gordon, Mr. Positivity. So um, I like what I'm doing right now. I get to talk a lot about their many programs and bring things like this to you. So let's jump in. I'm going to share my screen and we'll start talking about our communication that communication mark. So communication hits the mark again. Jerry Hansen and Success Makers is my or Success Builders is my company that I have started that I'm working through right now to do a lot of work with schools and with businesses and other organizations. So we're going to use something called the DISC. The DISC is something that I learned when I did my training with John Maxwell, and it's a program that I really like. There's lots of personality profiles out there. We know Myers-Briggs. We probably know, um, some other ones. But the DISC is nice because it's quick, it's to the point, and it is something that we can use for communication, determine communication styles, which I think is very important. When I work with high school kids or middle school kids and I use the DISC, it's fun to show them what their personality style, but more importantly, it's fun to show them how they talk to people affects how their message is heard. In fact, when I start that presentation with kids, I always tell them, I'm going to tell you by the end, help you figure out at the end of this how you can get your parents to say yes all the time. That sucks them in right there because we want our parents to say yes. And so that's really what this is about, how we can be more persuasive, how we can be more on target with our communication. So something like the DISC is helps build more effective teams, strengthen our relationships, improve communication, and it motivates yourself and others. We know some people are motivated by one thing, other people are motivated by other things. So that's why this is important, that we understand what the different motivations are and how people understand things. It's a measurable personality trait, and it's a powerful predictor of behavior. Wouldn't it be nice if we could predict how people are going to react in situations? And if we know their DISC profile, if we can kind of figure out what that is, we can do that with pretty good certainty. And actually for ourselves, we can kind of predict how we're going to act in certain situations, and that certainly is helpful. So that is another good thing about the DISC. It helps that way. So people are different. They're predictably different. And as we know what those patterns are, then it helps us in what we do. Now, some of our contributing factors to how people behave comes from heredity. They get it in their genes. It's what they know and what they've learned. Now, some other things, role models, especially up to age 12. The young kids are really impressionable. So they learn some of their behaviors by watching their parents and other people that they're around a lot. In today's world, probably pick up a lot from a screen because they're on the screens a lot. And then experiences can certainly affect our behavior. And so all of those factors come into play. but still using the disc, we can kind of figure that out. Now, the disc has four different categories. The dominants, the Ds, about 3% of our population is in that category. The Is, who are, we call them the influentials, about 11%. We go clockwise. The S's, they're the steady group. That's our biggest group, 69%. Almost 7 out of 10 people are in that category. And then finally, C, the compliance, about 17%. So first thing we're going to do is take a look at what those mean. So D, dominant, person with a dominant personality or communication skills is very direct. These people are very decisive, quick deciders, good problem solvers, good decision makers. That's what dominants look like. Our influential people are very inspiring, very interactive. We know when the I's walk in the room because whoo, the roof goes off. They know everybody in the room. They greet everybody in the room. They stop and talk to everybody in the room. The I's are those people that are fun to have on your staff because they will just always lighten the mood. And if things are down, you just bring in the I's and they'll just lift the party up right now. So the I's are fun to have on your staff. The S's are very stable and secure. We love having the S's on our staff because they're so stable and so secure. Where the I's kind of take us on a roller coaster sometimes, the S's, the less change, the better. They like everything steady. And now the compliance are very conscientious, cautious, perfectionist type people. Probably in our school system, these people are business managers or are computer people because they are very systematic and they need to work within a system. They work better that way. And they're ultra rule followers. Okay, ultra rule followers, a true compliance. So the other thing to look at on this slide is on the left side, the D's and the C's, they are into task. Okay, they're all about the job and getting the task done. Now, one difference between the D and the C is the D wants to get that task done as quickly as they can, get it done. The C's are going to take a lot of time because they're going to research that thing. They're going to check it out because one of the things they fear is being wrong. They don't want to be wrong. So they're going to take a lot longer to finish a task or even make a decision than the D's are. Now, over on the right side, our I's and our S's, they're all about people. They're not so concerned with the task. Not as much as the D's would probably like them to be anyway, but they are into people. They're all about people. They're all about supporting people and directing people and inspiring and influencing people. So they're more of the people type folks. So let's learn a little bit more about them. Okay, let's see if we can figure out what our style is. You figure out what your style is. As I run through a few things on each of these, we'll figure out what your style is, and then from there, we'll take that into how we can use that to our benefit when we're communicating. So let's look at our D's first. Now, normally, if I was doing an in-person seminar with you, I would pass out a sheet that would you'd be able to fill out quickly, and we'd be able to determine what are your strongest components. But being that we are virtual. I'm sitting here on the beach. I don't know where you're at, but let's take a look at our list here and see how many of these fit how you think you are. Are you an instinctive leader? Are you autocratic managers? These are great in crisis because they can just flip a switch and go right into crisis management mode. Okay, they function well with heavy loads. They're innovative about getting results done. They're creative. They don't like status quo. They like to just think outside the box a lot, but get it done. But they really focus on goals, and they're very specific and they're very direct. We'll come back to that direct thing in a little bit, but they're very specific. They're very motivated. They overcome obstacles. They provide good direction and leadership. So a lot of these people are in leadership positions. They can push a group toward a decision. They really like it if it's the decision that they've already come to. And a lot of times what it is pushing the group toward their way of thinking. They're outspoken, they're willing to speak out, and they're generally very optimistic. These types of leaders are also pretty good persuaders to a certain point. When things go wrong, then they kind of blow up. They welcome challenges without fear. Bring it on. I mean, if there's a challenge, bring it on because it's something out of the normal, and they just hate routine. So a challenge coming down their way is right up their alley. They're risk takers. They're big picture people. They're not detail people at all, but they're big picture people, which is why being in a leadership role is good for them. They can handle multiple projects, and they're real self-reliant. They don't need anybody else to do a lot of stuff, and they aren't very good about delegating usually as well. So now the other thing is that usually have a high ego, and they seek authority. Okay, they want to be in charge. In fact, they have to be in charge. I mean, the high D's, they have to be in charge. One of the stories I use when I talk with kids is that, if you're going out to lunch with a high D, they've already decided where you're going because that's what they do. And they're driving. They're going to drive to wherever you're going. Even if they're going in your car, they're going to drive because they don't like sitting over in that passenger seat ever, because that's just, they want to be in charge. They want to be in control of that steering wheel, both in when driving and in life. They want to be in control. They get very impatient. They like changes. And again, now confrontation, they'll respond to direct confrontation. Sometimes they can come off as really edgy. So if the confrontation is too strong, they will up the ante. They will get very verbal, maybe holler, get angry, whatnot, because that's confrontation is kind of a direct hit on them. They fear confrontation and being taken advantage of. So when that happens, they're going to get a lot more assertive. They're going to get a lot more direct. So, that's one of the things that we know about our real high Ds. Okay. So just to summarize a little bit about our Ds, they're bottom line organizers. They place high value on time. Let's get things done. Okay. They don't have time for a lot of other chit chat or other baloney. It's like, we're at work, let's get this done. And they like to challenge the status quo, and they're very innovative in doing that. Great problem solvers, risk takers, and they're self-starters. They can just go. Don't have to give them a lot of direction. Now, some problems, some limitations sometimes that come with those Ds and their behaviors is they'll overstep authority. If they're not the one in charge, they might think they are, or they might do something that they probably should have gotten permission for. They're very argumentative. They don't like to lose. They're very difficult for them admitting they're wrong. They don't like to say they're wrong, and they don't like to lose. I know this well because of my training. What I do now is I analyze a lot of people. My wife hates it. We'll be out somewhere and she'll just see that look on my face and she'll say, "You're figuring out what they are, aren't you?" And I do. But my wife is a high D, beautiful lady, sweet lady, but oh my, she's a high D. And she cannot admit saying she's wrong. I'll even tease her sometimes when I've caught her dead wrong in something to say, just say it. Just say those words, and she'll just look at me like, why would I want to say that? Why would I want to admit that? I'm a D. I don't admit that. Okay. And she hates losing. If you play poker with my wife, you're going to play all night till she's ahead. Let me tell you, the grandkids laugh about that because grandma never loses at poker. So high Ds are just very competitive, don't like to lose, don't like to admit they're wrong, because if they admit they're wrong, that would indicate a weakness, and they don't have any weaknesses. So let's look at the I's. All right. As I said, our I's are great to have on our teams and in our buildings or whatnot, because they're very positive. They're great communicators. Lots of times these people become spokesmen, things like that. If they're in a management position, they're very participatory. Okay, they like to get people involved, and they're very inspirational. and they complement others real well in that. So they're very motivating. So they're good in management positions to certain points. Okay, they're very spontaneous and agreeable. They respond well to the unexpected. They can adjust and monitor and adjust and change quickly. uh, they create an atmosphere of well-being because in their world everything is sunny. That's why I like this slide being yellow, because for them everything is sunny, everything is good. If you ask them how they're doing, I'm great today, how are you? So they express their ideas well. Again, they're uh, very good at talking, very good communicators. They work well with other people. They work very well with other people. They love being around people, and they need to be around people. Okay, and that's how they accomplish their goals, is through other people. They, almost like they have a way of motivating other people to get the job done and get their stuff done. Okay, they have a great sense of humor usually, very accepting and open of other people. They're great in brainstorming because they're used to just letting things fly sometimes without even thinking about it. They just they're out there, and so they're great brainstormers. They're very enthusiastic and persuasive. They'll give out their opinions. They're not afraid to throw their opinions out there. So that's what the I. Now, some other things about the I, we call them the communicators. They're very emotional. They take you on this roller coaster with their emotions. I tell kids when I talk to them, if you have a friend that's an I, um, they're fun to be around, but understand they're very emotional. You're going to ride a roller coaster with them up and down. And I also tell them I's usually have lots of friends because they lose friends, because we just can't ride that roller coaster with them all the time. And the other thing is, if you cross an I, if you do something to that I person that they don't like, they may just, you're out. They have a lot of problem forgiving people like that. So that's one of those things that I warn kids you got to be careful of. So, but they're into people and they're in the moment. They can live in the moment almost to a fault. They can't think too far down the road because they're into right now. But again, very optimistic, encouraging, and persuasive. We like to have them around. If you're very verbal and very engaging, you're probably a high I. Now, if you're very quiet and reserved, if that's a low, if you are quiet and reserved, that's a low I, or not an I at all. You're probably an S, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. So, their biggest fear is being rejected. They don't like taking that rejection. So, strengths of our I's are they're liked by others. They have a way of taking a disastrous or some type of tense situation and bringing humor into it just to lighten everybody up. Okay, so they make friends easily. Like I say, when they walk in the room, they know everybody, or if they don't know them, they do shortly. They're warm and friendly, generous and sincere. These people volunteer a lot. They're our best volunteers because they're so generous and sincere. Very spontaneous and very entertaining. Now, here's some flip sides, some limitations of those I's, some things that if we're working with I's or talking with I's, we have to keep in mind. They tend to exaggerate things a little bit. They're very disorganized and forgetful, and they're easily distracted. Kind of a selective listener. They kind of listen. They listen enough to know when you're done talking so they can jump in, or even when you take a breath so they can jump in. Um, they have a lot of difficulty with following through. So if we're supervising an I, we have to make sure that we're checking in on them and whatnot. Okay, so one of the things, again, when I talk with kids about them, I challenge the kids. I'll say, I bet you if I walk into your bedroom and look in your closet, I can tell if you're an I, because an I's closet usually is scattered, things all over, nothing really, no rhyme or reason where anything is, probably some stuff on the floor. If you look at their dressers, it might even be stuff hanging out the dressers, and certainly the drawers aren't organized by, whatever is in there. You might have a pair of pants and a shirt and a pair of socks in the same drawer. But that's the I. They just get it in there, stuff it in there. And their desk probably looks the same way. Okay, that's the I. And they're not good at following through. And the fun little thing I say there to kids is that if you have a friend that's an I and they tell you they're going to call you after school, don't be waiting by the phone. They're not calling. they've forgotten that as soon as you walked away. Okay, so they're just not good at that stuff. They like to make lots of promises, that they'll do stuff, and they forget about it. In fact, they're great bargainers. A kid might bargain with their mom that, Mom, if you'll let me go to the movie tonight with my friend, I'll clean my room tomorrow. And mom will say yes, and she has forgotten, the eye has forgotten that promise the minute she walks out the door. Totally forgot it. Even the next day, she probably has forgotten it because they're good at bargaining, but they're also very forgetful and not good at following through. So if we're working with those folks, we have to keep these things in mind. All right. So let's go and look at our S's. Now, about 69% or almost 7 out of 10 of our people are right here. Okay. They're good relators. They're participatory managers as well. If they're in a management position, they're really into relationships. This group is very strong with relationships. They're very dependable and loyal, and they're very sincere. They like to make others feel welcome and belonging to the group. They're good ambassadors, so to speak. They a lot of times can see easier ways of doing things. Problem is they might not speak up and tell you that. Okay, but they are very intuitive about people and relationships. They just have good insights there, good common sense. They will buy into your team goals. They are great team players. They do not want anybody mad at them. So they're great team players, and they identify strongly with a team. They like being part of a team, and they're the relationship builders of that team. Okay, so they're stable. Um, they're very realistic and practical. So these guys probably aren't going to be thinking outside the box as much because that gets a little dangerous, and they're not big risk takers. So, but they're usually very even tempered and very patient. Okay, so that's what our S's look like. They're also very loyal and trustworthy. Like I say, team player, great listener. Number 5 is interesting here. They resist change and they adapt slow. Now, if you take that to our current situation where we're in with the COVID situation and school ending so abruptly and having to change to something else within 2 weeks, this drove the S's crazy. They just really struggle with this. On the flip side, coming back to school now, whenever that happens, they're going to struggle with that because they'll be so concerned about, is everything in place so everybody can be safe? How's it going to work? It will be a change for them because when we come back, we all know that things are not going to. We're not going to go right back to the operate the same way we did. There'll be lots of different changes, and they are going to struggle with all of those changes. They are going to miss the old world a lot and want to go there, want to go back there. Why can't we just do it the way we used to do it? That's what you're going to hear from them. So we have to be talking to these folks now about what's on the plate, what are we thinking about, what are we talking about, just so that you kind of bring them along slowly. Because if you don't communicate to them, there'll be a void of communication, and they'll start filling that void with their own thoughts and things. And then they'll hear something from somebody else, and then it'll go crazy on you. So make sure that you're communicating, especially with these S's, about what lies down the road. It'll be very important for you. Okay, so some strengths: they make good friends, they're very loyal and dependable. They hate conflict, they avoid conflict. Remember, they're peacemakers, they're good mediators because they don't like conflict. They're very good listeners and supportive, easygoing, relaxed, patient, and well balanced. A lot of these people end up being teachers, counselors, um, religious people, clergy, and whatnot because of the skills that they have. Now, some limitations and some things that we have to watch out for with the S's, and things that S's need to work on, is they keep all their emotions hidden. You aren't really always going to know what they're thinking or what they're feeling. Okay, much different than the eyes. You know exactly what the eye is feeling. It everybody knows what the eyes are feeling. and the same with the D's. But the S's, they're going to keep everything pretty close. And so they might appear to be stubborn. And the reason is they don't like change. And so if there's some changes coming and they don't want to go there, they'll appear stubborn when it's really just their personality of cautiousness and not liking change. Okay. Very indecisive. When I talk with kids, I use this example with them. You know, if you have a friend that's an S and you ask them, where do you want to go for supper tonight with me? They'll look at you, they'll try to read you because they don't want to disappoint you. And then they'll say something like, well, I don't know, where do you want to go? Because they don't want to make a decision and they don't want to upset somebody. So they're very indecisive. They take a long time to make a decision, even if they ever do make a decision. So, you know, just know that with if you're dealing with an S, don't expect a quick decision with them, or you might have to push them or guide them to a decision. All right. Although they resent being pushed. So you got to be very tricky about how you do that. Okay. Just know they're slower paced. They aren't, they don't need the fast world that the I's need or the D's need. They're just more slower paced, okay, more passive. All right. So uh, let's look at our C's, our last group. And this group is really interesting. Remember, it's a smaller group. I think it was 11%. These people, like I said, these are like our business managers, our computer people, usually things, people like that, data people. They're great organizers. I mean, if you go to their closet, everything's organized by color. If you open one of their dresser drawers, everything is folded like it just came off the table at Target or J.C. Penney's or something. I mean, they are organized and they're perfectionist. Okay, they're very systematic. They either create systems or they work well within systems. So everything is laid out for them. They know exactly what's expected of them. Okay, they're very conscientious. They like details and they like to be in control of details. Where our D's are not detail people, they're big picture people. Our C's are all into details and they want details and they'll go find all the details they need before they make a decision. They ask a lot of questions. Oh my, that'll be the telltale sign for the C's. They are going to ask a lot of questions. So you have to know that when you're having a conversation with a C, that be ready for lots of questions and don't take it as they are questioning you or they don't trust what you're saying. It's just that that's how they fill in the details. They ask questions. Okay. They're very good at staying focused on the task. Once they have a task, they're all in on that task. Okay. Quality is top notch for them. They're just doing something good enough is not good enough for them. You know, they want top quality because they lean toward that perfectionism thing. They, again, work very systematically and they'll strive for consensus. They'll want some consensus, but what they'll want kind of like the D's want consensus on their idea, the C's want consensus on their idea too, and they'll feel like I did all this work and all this research. Why aren't you buying in? Why aren't you agreeing with me? And they can get sometimes pretty put off or standoffish if you shut them down or if you don't agree with them. So they can get a little bit tricky that way. All right, but they're big time analysis, like analysis paralysis by analysis, because it'll take so long in analyzing something that things may not get done. Again, they're very perfectionist. They're very sensitive about things. Again, very accurate, and they'll analyze and analyze and analyze. Orderly, organized, need a little details, and they're very precise communicators. Like the I's are good communicators, the C's are going to be very precise. Where the I might shoot something out there without thinking about it, that usually doesn't happen with our C's. They've picked their words and thought about their words very carefully, and they talk a lot slower than the I's would. Their worry is losing security and people not trusting them. So, but again, they follow the rules. They are perfectionists. So uh, these are some of those characteristics. I should add this slide first, maybe. Or maybe we did. Oh, we did. I went the wrong way. Okay, so they set a lot of high standards, details, um, very self-disciplined, very thrifty and economical. Okay, they're going to think about everything they buy, and they're going to be very economical and thrifty, which is why superintendents like to have a business manager that's a C, because they are going to really be tight with that money. They research and analyze things well, and they are very creative. They're very creative and talented. It's just hard to see that in them. All right. Um, some limitations, some problems, some watch out for us with RCs is that they're very critical of themselves and others. Okay. Because of that perfectionism thing. Um, they're not into people. They just aren't. If you have a friend that's a C, you probably can't get them to go do a lot of things because they would rather spend time by themselves. They'd much rather spend time quietly by themselves, probably because their brain works so hard because it's always revving that they just need some downtime. And so if they don't want to do something with you, don't take it personal. It's nothing you did, or probably not nothing you did, not anything you did. It's just that they need their quiet time. They need their alone time to just recharge and think, because they are thinkers. The C's and the D's are thinkers. When we ask them a question, we always ask them, what do you think about that? Don't ask them what you feel about that, because they really wouldn't. They'll tell you what to think about it because they don't really know how to interpret that, how I feel about it. I just know what I think about it. Now, the I's and the S's, they're the feelers. If you ask them what they think about that, they're going to tell you how they feel about it, because that's kind of how they are. It's all about feelings, and that. Where on the left side, D's and C's, it's all about thinking. So paralysis of analysis. They can take forever to analyze things. And they're very social insecure. They just don't like being in big groups and whatnot, and that. So need to understand that about them. So now, what does this mean? Now, hopefully you've kind of figured out maybe what you are. I'm a high I, which drives my wife, the high D, crazy, because I'm spontaneous, and I'm, here and there and whatnot. Um, so it's interesting, once you know that, even about your spouse, you can kind of figure things out, and it helps a lot. But improving our communication. Communication hits the mark. Let's take a look at that. When we're talking to a D, all right, so when you're communicating, trying to get a message across to a D, here's some things you need to remember. Okay, get to the point, bottom line. They don't like a lot of chit chat. They're not going to sit and visit with you about what they did this weekend, or how the family is, or anything, how the game went last night. Let's get to the point. What's bottom line? So talk about the what more than the how. For them, they want to know what's going to happen. They'll let somebody else figure out the how. They don't really worry about the how. It's what's going to happen, and when's it going to happen, and what are the results going to be. Okay, focus on results. They are into the results. All right. Give them options and choices. You can't just say, here's what we're going to do, because they'll have thought about something else, or will think about something else. So if you want good luck in communicating with the D, give them some options, give them some choices for the problems that you're trying to solve. Highlight the benefits. They want to know, what are the benefits of your decision, and stick to the facts. Okay, don't make it personal or anything, but just stick to the facts, like the old Dragnet series. Just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts, sir. That's RDs. Here's some things you shouldn't do. You shouldn't ramble or repeat yourself, because they'll see that as a waste of time, and they might even think that you're kind of inferior because you don't know what you're talking about. So you need to make sure that you've got your ducks in a row when you go in there to talk to that D, to make sure that these things are there. Don't be too jovial or social, because that's not them, and they'll just kind of look at you like, come on, let's get it done, get to the point. Don't take too long to decide. If the D has given you something or asked you to decide something, don't take too long, because they don't take too long. They can't figure out what takes people so long to make them up their mind, you know. So, you know, don't take too long because you'll drive them crazy. Don't, you know, don't make generalizations. They don't like that. They like more specific stuff, but not a lot of detail. Remember, focus on the problems. Focus on problems. Don't focus on problems without solutions. If you're coming to them with a problem, you better be bringing a solution. They don't want to hear just complaining. Okay, that'll set them off, and they'll get angry and aggressive that way. So talk about solutions with them, and don't make any unsupported statements. Don't make anything you can't back up, because they will call you on the carpet on that. All right, they like to debate there. So when the D's are talking with other people, here's how what they have to do. So this is the part about how to get our communication to hit the mark. Okay, how to get it to be received in the best way. And by the way, we call this the platinum rule. You know, the golden rule is treat others the way we want to be treated. The platinum rule is to communicate to other people in the way they want to be communicated to. And that's exactly what this slide shows. So the D is going to relate to another D, and those are all interesting conversations, because they might in both their minds be battling for who's in charge. So you have to have mutual respect to avoid conflict. All right, don't come in and try to bully a D. Don't come in and try to, you know, take charge of a D, because that's not going to work. So D's must have a mutual respect for each other. They both must understand the boundaries of their authority. Okay. And so that's how D's have to relate to each other. When a D talks to an I, the D must be very direct and deal with issues in a straightforward way, because you have to keep those eyes, you know, focused. And so if you wander a little bit, boy, you're playing right into their ball game. So don't do that. The D's don't do that. And also always negotiate commitments and goals on an equal basis. So don't tell them what they're going to do, but just make it feel like together you're coming to this decision. Here's what we're going to do. And then D's have to remember, with those I's, you got to follow up, because they don't follow through. So you have to follow up, but you have to be careful. You don't want it to look like micromanaging, but you just want to check in on them. How's that coming? Or when you set something, say, okay, when are we going to have this done by? You know, what are our goals? When's a date? And then keep them to that, checking in. When D's are talking to S's, now this can really get tricky. And remember, this is 7/10 of our staff, 7 out of 10 people. So if you're a high D, you've got to kind of watch this a little bit. You know, don't be pushy. Recognize the sincerity of them and their good work. The S's like to be acknowledged for their good work. Okay, that's very important to them. 7 of 10 people like to hear that they're doing good work. Be friendly. You got to just back off a little bit and be a little more easygoing and steady paced with those S's. Okay, you have to be careful, because where the D can get aggressive and rude and all that, that's going to really shut that S down. So you have to be careful with that. When the D's talk to the C's, now remember, these folks are a lot alike, and they're really task orientated, but where the D's are go, 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 the C's are slowing down. They're taking their time with decisions. So when the D is talking with that C, you have to slow it down. Okay. Avoid tendency to omit details, because the C's want the details. So you have to feed them some. They like the data and the details and stuff. Expect them to ask lots of questions, because that's what they're going to do. That's how they get their details. Okay. And don't view that they need all that information as any opposition to you or anything. It's just, that's how they operate. That's how they get their details. Okay. So let's look at the I's. You know, stay positive with the I's. You know, anytime you communicate with an I, stay positive. Let them verbalize thoughts and ideas. Let them talk and share testimonials. Make sure details aren't overwhelming. I'll tell you from my experience as an I, you know, anytime the discussion goes to data and a lot of details, I just go, whew, take a little nap here. When you're done with that, I'll come back around, because I'm just not into that stuff. That's not my personality. But if you're talking with them, you just need to make sure you don't overwhelm them with all of that stuff. Remember, they would rather talk than write. So if you want something from an I, you're going to get it easier and quicker and better if they can just tell you about it rather than write something. These guys aren't real good at doing written reports. Okay. One, they'll never get to it, because they just, they're procrastinators and they don't follow through and all that typically. And I know I'm doing a lot of generalizing here, but typically that's what they're like. So you need to create some incentives for follow through for them. Okay, you've got to be their guidance to do that. So here's some things you do not do with the eyes, because you'll just, turn them off, shut them down. Don't take away their social time. Okay, don't say you can't be having a coffee break, or mention something about spending too much time chit chatting. I mean, you've got to be delicate around that, because that's their social time, and that's their bread. That's their bread and butter. That's their air that they breathe, is that social time. Okay. Don't interrupt or ignore them, because they won't like that. If you're in a meeting with an I and they're talking and you're on your phone and not really listening, that's going to, well, it irritates anybody, but it'll really set the eyes off. Okay. Don't do all the talking. You can't talk at the eye all the time and expect them not to say anything, because if you tell them that up front, you're here to just listen and not talk. They're not going to hear a word you say, because they've already shut down, because you've already taken away one of the things they like to do. Okay. Don't tell them what to do. They hate direct what to do type thing. So you have to work with them on how we're going to get this done and whatnot. Okay, so you got to be careful. That's a slippery slope on the tone you use with an I. Okay, don't reject their thoughts and ideas. I mean, you have to acknowledge some of those. Okay, you can't accept everything everybody tells you, of course, but you have to acknowledge their thoughts and the ideas. Don't ask them to support their statements. Again, remember, they just flip stuff out there. They're just brainstorming and bird walking and everything. So don't ask them to support everything, because they can't, and then they'll get befuddled and they'll be done. So when the eyes now the eyes, when you're talking to people, that's what this chart is about. This is our platinum rule. Remember, how do other people want to hear? So when the eyes, if you're an I and you're talking to a D, remember, you need to be very direct with them, deal with issues real straightforward, because that's what they like. Okay, not a lot of fluff, not a lot of chit chat, not a lot of data and details, but big picture stuff. Okay, and then they also, the D's will want to know, when's it going to get done. How long is this going to take? What's it going to cost? How long? All of those things. Now, I's, when they're in discussion with another I, first of all, that's going to be a noisy conversation, but make sure that you're friendly with each other. Make sure you're complimentary. Eyes like to hear compliments. Acknowledge each other's accomplishments. And this is probably going to be the hardest part. Listen sincerely instead of just planning what you're going to say next. All right, actually listen to them. And so that's, for an I, what's going to be really, really tough, is to listen intently for what they're saying and their ideas. Okay, so when I's talk to an S, again, both of these are people, right? They like people, so, but they need to slow it down, because the I's talk so fast. So you need to slow it down, be more easygoing, show appreciation for what they do, establish the friendship. Okay, they're all into friendship and relationships. Whatever you do, don't get pushy with an S, because they'll back off, they'll shut you down. But S's can be your best friend, because they're so supportive and all that stuff. The other thing that's nice about the S, especially for an I, is the S is great at follow through and great at getting things done. So I's want to have a couple good S's in their corner to help them get things done. They're great that way. So, and finally, the C, when the I is talking to the C, you need to carefully present facts and prepare for a discussion, because you're going to have that. Expect the C to have some doubts, because that's, they might, if the idea doesn't match up with what they're thinking, they're going to have some doubts. So you're going to have to do some talking around that, figure out how to handle that. and then give them time to evaluate the data before making decisions. You cannot come to a C and say, okay, here's the information, here's the problem, here's the information. I need a decision by 5 o'clock tonight. You know, that's not going to work. They need at least a day, a couple days. I tell kids in the workshop with kids, if you have a parent that's a C and you want them to give you a decision, you want to go to a movie Friday night, you better be asking them on Tuesday. Don't come Friday afternoon and ask, can I go to the movie tonight? Because you're a parent that's a C, has a lot of research to do. Who are you going with? What's the movie? Da, 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 da. And so um, ask them early. The C's need a lot of time to make decisions and evaluate data and research. So just understand that when you're talking to them. Okay, let's go to the S's. Remember, 70%, 69% of our people are here. So do's, be personable and agreeable. Express genuine interest in them. You know, you got to butter up these folks. Give them time to adjust for change. And that's what we talked about earlier, is they're going to need lots of times to adjust to the upcoming change. Clarify their roles and what's expected of them. Sometimes they might think they have to do too much and you just have to say, no, I just need you to do this. All right. And then provide them with personal assurances. Things will be okay, especially as we're talking about this whole plans for coming back to school or whatever we're going to do. Give them personal assurances that they can do it, and I'm here to help you, and we'll get through this together. Always use we instead of you. You know, they'll take you as a personal attack or something, but if you say we, then that's how they think. They think in the terms of we. So always use we and never you. Here's some things not to do. Don't pressure them. Don't pressure them and push them really hard. Don't be overly demanding or abrupt with them, because you'll just shut them down. And same with being impolite, rude, or aggressive or confrontational. Okay, so the S's in those instances, a lot of time, because they don't have the high level of self-confidence that you may have, will just kind of back down or just shut down. So be careful with that. So when talking, so now the S people. Okay, if you are an S, here's the platinum rule things that you're going to have to remember. So S's, when you're talking to a D, you're going to have to step it up quite a bit. You got to be a lot more aggressive than you normally are. If you talk in the slow pace that you always do, the D's are going to get frustrated, and I'm going to tell you, come on, get to the point. You know what? So recognize that a D, the D reviews or views maybe your kindness, because a lot of S's are really kind and sincere. The D's sometimes view that as a weakness. Okay, it's not fair, but that's how they view it, as a weakness, where they're tougher. D's are tough, so they don't have that weakness. So just understand that kindness may be viewed by them as a weakness. Deal with issues straightforward and try to increase your pace. So you got to step it up. When you're talking with a D, you have to just get that heart racing and step it up with them. So when S's are relating to an I, remember, friendly, complimentary, listen to their ideas and recognize their high I accomplishments. Recognize and accept and expect that the I's are going to want to do some things, some experimental things or things outside the box, right? They might want to try this or that or anything. So you just need to know that about them and expect that, which for you, the S's, you're not that way. You like status quo, nothing rocking the boat, slow change. Okay, so now S's talking with another S. I had someone once tell me this could be like a turtle race because everything's going to be slow. An S talking to an S is, it's going to be slower, more relaxed, steadier. But you want to, if you're talking to another S, express some appreciation for their friendship, the support they give. Remember that trust and acceptance develop over time. And so think long term. S's are slow to give that trust. But once you got it, it's pretty solid. Okay, you really have to screw up to lose it, but just know that it's going to take a while to develop that trust with them. And finally, the S's, when you're talking to a C, Focus on the facts, okay? Where you probably want to work on relationships, they're not into relationships. They want the facts. Remember, just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts, sir. Like Dragnet. So when we're talking with those C's, just the facts. Give them lots of facts, lots of details. Expect them to express doubt again because they think they have all the answers. Um, and then give them time to evaluate the information you give them. So that's just kind of like with all of those. So, and finally, the C's. Let's talk about the C's. So, when we're talking with our C's, let's remember to prepare our case in advance because when you go in there, you're going to get grilled pretty good about this and that and the other thing. You're going to get asked lots of questions. So, make sure that you can support any statements with facts. Be precise, be exact and accurate. Be ready to answer questions. Don't exaggerate anything. Don't say anything that you can't back up. Okay. And avoid surprises. C's don't like surprises. All right. So you have to avoid, surprising them with something. Um, be patient, persistent, and diplomatic. Okay. C's are probably another group that struggled with the COVID thing and the closing schools so fast because it happened so fast that it was a surprise, and for them to figure out what they have to do next and get geared up to carry on, they wanted to do a lot of research and all that because remember they want to be perfect. They wanted to be perfect the first day they went online with their kids, and so as we move back toward what we're going to do come this fall, we need to be keeping them in the loop so that they can start working on that. They'll want to get a good head start. They'll want to research what's going to be the best way to do it and everything. So here's some don'ts with the C's. Okay, you don't want to withhold the details because then they'll just not trust you. They'll wonder why you're not telling them everything. And don't give them just general guidelines either because they're going to want more specific. And don't give them unclear expectations. Okay, so with our C's, we almost have to tell them exactly what we want them to do. Don't expect them to guesstimate. I always kid or I always laugh because we had a business manager in one district I worked at was this high C and he was exact. And somebody in a meeting asked him to guesstimate something, and he just looked at him like, "What do you mean?" Well, just guesstimate. What's your ballpark figure? What's that going to cost? Well, he just couldn't do that in about 5 minutes. And he just pulls out his calculator. He starts working. About 5 minutes later, he tells us to the penny what that was going to cost. They can't guesstimate. That's not precise enough. All right, that's not good enough. So don't expect them to guesstimate for you because they're not very good at that. All right, they just don't like to do that. Their personality is precision. All right, don't answer questions vaguely or casually. Don't be flippant with these C folks because that'll frustrate them because they want detailed answers, all right? And don't push them for immediate answers, like we said. They need time. Okay, they need time to figure things out and expect that they'll go figure it out and they'll come back to you with it. All right. And when they answer something, when they solve a problem, it will be thorough. It will most likely be right on target because they've researched lots of things. So just know that. Teachers ought to know that C's really raise their hand in class because one, they don't like to be wrong. Two, they need time to think about it. Where the I's are raising their hand before you've even finished the question. And then when you finish the question, they can't remember what it is. All right, that's the I. But um, the C doesn't need that recognition of being called on, and they don't like that to be called on because they need some time to think about that. So that's something important. And even with our teams that we work with, if you have somebody that's a C on your team, uh, don't pin them down on something and say we need an immediate answer. Okay, so now C's when you're relating to different people. When you're relating to those D's, again, like always, be direct, deal with issues straightforward, and deal with commitments and goals on an equal basis. So, you probably the D's don't want all those details that you want to give them. They're just going to want the highlights. Okay. C's, when you're dealing with an I, this is a tough conversation for a C because the C wants to talk and tell all the details and everything, and the I is just, just wants to know how things are going and everything. So be friendly and complimentary. Avoid the tendency to challenge the ideas of the high I by saying, well, here are the facts and the details, okay? Because that's gonna that's gonna really put a damper on your relationship with that I, if you shut them down like that. So just avoid that tendency. All right. C's with an S, be be relaxed, be amicable, because they're sensitive. Work on establishing a friendship with the high S's. Show appreciation for the tasks that they've done. All right. They'll be good supporters of you because they're good supporters of everybody. But you just have to make sure that you're careful. Sometimes the C's can come off as being rude or abrasive because they're just, they can't understand why other people can't see things the way they do sometimes. So you just have to be careful of that and understand that about the C's. And then finally, if a C is talking to another C, this is going to be like a chess match because they're going to try to one up each other on details and stuff like that. So focus on the facts and the details. Remove any apparent threats. In other words, don't try to outshine them. All right. Plan carefully. Accept and encourage doubts and questions. Ask them what kind of questions do you have? What are your doubts about this? Whatever. Get those out on the table, and then provide ample time, lots of time for evaluation and decision making. So that's in a nutshell, that's what the Platinum Rule is about. That's what taking the information from our personality language, transferring it to the personality language of the person we're talking to. That's what that's all about. All right. Now, if we're in the workshop together, this is the last activity I do is we now take all of this and put down a little action plan. So on these two sheets, the first thing I ask them to do is pick one person, pick the name of one person and put it down there. And then the second column is what's their perceived style? What do you think they are? Are they a D, an I, an S, or a C? And now keep in mind that we're kind of a mixture of these things, but what's the highest trait that they might be? And then the third column is what may cause tension and conflict? In other words, what are the don'ts that I want to remember from that don't list when I'm talking to that style? What are the things I want to avoid with them? And then the fourth column over there is what things can we do to develop a better relationship? So how do you want to develop a good relationship with that person based on what you know about them? Okay, so these are the things that help us if we're going to build an effective relationship and have our communication be successful. So hopefully you got some things there that will help you. If you have any more questions or I can do some more work with you or your staff on this, just let me know. Again, I'm Jerry Hansen from Success Builders, and I would love to visit with you more on that. So thanks for taking time today to watch our presentation, and be sure to check out some of all the other great presentations that you'll find on the virtual conference. Thank you, and have a great summer, and get some time out there for yourself. Find a beach like I have back here, spend some time on. So thank you.